For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Mutsabi Hwayani. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. So yesterday you presented a seminar, a paper advert on Nelson Mandela's masculinities. Why do you use the plural form and not refer to his masculinity rather?
I think that if you use the singular form masculinity, you are suggesting that there is such a thing called masculinity that is invariable, that if I as a man have certain qualities and I want to be regarded as a man, they are set qualities, masculinity in the singular. The word masculinities suggests that there are a number of ways of being a man. And it's very important for us in South Africa, a very violent country that we are, to recognize the importance of having models of masculinity that are not only the rough, tough type who take no nonsense, who don't settle disagreements by reasoning but use their fists. Now, in the case of Mandela, this is important for a range of reasons. He calls his autobiography Long Walk to Freedom. His earlier collection of his speeches is called No Easy Walk to Freedom. Now, what Mandela is saying is his life is a journey. The struggle for freedom is a journey. And Mandela's life entails a number of journeys when he moves from one place to another, from one condition, freedom, to prisoner, or Tembu, young boy training to be a man, training to counsel the king, to becoming a country hick in Johannesburg, but then a freedom fighter. So Mandela changes a lot. In his later life, he matures, and some of the tough masculinity that one associates with him when he's in Timberland, but also in the 50s, the imagery of Mandela as a boxer, as an impetuous young man who has to be reprimanded sometimes for suggesting that the time of non-violence is over. A lot of that changes, and in his later life, a lot of people say the prison period is decisive, and Mandela spends the period in prison, I think, coming to terms and at peace with himself as a human being and as a man. And it's in that period that the man of war, the founder of MK, sees the possibility of a peaceful resolution of the conflict in South Africa. Mandela, who is a much calmer, less impetuous person, less angry man than before he went to jail, prepares to win the peace. Now, it doesn't mean that the qualities that he had earlier completely disappear. When it was necessary to be angry, he could be angry, as he did show de Klerk at Codesa when de Klerk behaved in a way that he regarded as dishonorable. He got very angry. That didn't disappear, but also his early Tembu identity resurfaced at various times in his life. Some of the things that he says relate to conventional Tembu conceptions of what a man should do. It is not nice, he says, for a husband to not be there to protect his family. So a sort of protective sense of honor that he felt he had not fulfilled. He also says things like a man should always have a home near to where he was born. So there's these things that remain. But the overall point I'm wanting to make is that the notion of masculinity in all people is not immutable. It can change. Mandela changed his conditions of life, sometimes against his will, when he gets imprisoned, but also through consciously molding his personality in a different way. And this can be seen particularly when he comes out of prison and he wants to ensure that the peace succeeds. And this, I've indicated before, is demonstrated, amongst other things, is in the way he danced. He entered into the toi-toi, which is an aggressive war dance, where people have words like shoot, shoot, shoot to kill. Mandela instead smiled, affirmed people, and was inclusive in the way he did things.
One of the main features of the paper is Mandela's initiation. Why do you place so much emphasis and weight on that one aspect of his life?
It's very interesting in the sense that Mandela is very troubled by whether he has become a man long after the initiation ceremony. He grows up in Timberland, a people who have lost their independence. And I think it very often happens in the people who have lost their independence that they emphasize warrior-type masculinity. As a young boy, he describes how he played most of the time with boys, and they mainly played war games and things like that. So he was brought up with a notion of masculinity which emphasized toughness, although in his interactions with his mother in early life, he was introduced to stories that were not about heroic warriors only, but about doing good deeds. He also learnt in stick fighting, you don't humiliate people, the sense of honor that remained with him throughout his life. When it came for the time for his initiation, or for the circumcision part of initiation, the boys who were supposedly now emerging as men came to a celebration, and a chief addressed them, and this chief is a descendant of Dalindyebo, an ancestor of Mandela himself, and he said, "You think you are men, but you will never be men as long as you are conquered." Before this, by the way, Mandela remarks, during the circumcision, you're supposed to be stoic about the pain and shout immediately the foreskin is cut, shout, "I am a man." He was a bit slow in doing this. So he already felt there was some blot on his copybook. But then at the ceremony, this chief says, "You are not men. Now you will be going to work for the white man instead of realizing your talents." And Mandela is quite angry at the time, as he describes it, because he feels this chief doesn't appreciate what the whites have brought to South Africa, and he's casting a damper on the whole celebration. But Mandela leaves the celebration with a troubled sense, because what this chief is saying, you cannot be a man as long as you're not free. And it applies obviously to women as well, and it ties to a discourse which the whites used of Africans being an infant race. Now Mandela remains troubled with this, and when he gets to Johannesburg, it's obviously still in his mind. And really, it only gets resolved for him, in a sense, when he leads the Defiance campaign of 1952. And he reflects on this campaign when the ANC, 8,000 people defied, and he was the leader of this. And he says, "I felt now that I was a man. The enemy had felt my punches." Interestingly, he uses the imagery of boxing. I had hit the enemy and he felt my punches. I was no longer afraid. It was the birth of a freedom fighter. So Mandela's coming to terms with his masculinity appears to get resolved. Doesn't mean he doesn't stop growing as a man. Appears to get resolved through his involvement in the freedom struggle. So just as the chief tied being a man, or we can say being an adult, with being a free human being, Mandela himself experiences that and declares in his autobiography that that was the moment when he felt he was really a man, when he fought back, when he recognized white oppression and resisted it.
Thank you so much, Professor. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about Nelson Mandela's changing manifestations of masculinity.